I'm sitting here today with Mr. Beasley, Mr. Joe Beasley, Mr. International Joe. He just got back from Somaliland. Mr. Beasley, tell me about your trip to Somaliland.
Well, it really was an odyssey of a trip. Somaliland is a place that is not well known in this country. We talk about Somalia. Everybody knows that what we're talking about. But when you say Somaliland, it becomes a little bit more problematical because although Somaliland became an independent country 26 years ago, they've never been acknowledged by the international community of being a country. And so that is why I guess we never really know about Somaliland. But the capital city is Hargeisa. And so even trying to book a flight into Hargeisa, Somaliland, is problematic in and of itself. I had wound up go from here to Toronto, Canada, and I'd spent 12 hours in the airport at Toronto, and then to take a flight from Toronto into Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and was there for several hours, and then finally a flight from Addis Ababa into Hargeisa, Somaliland, was quite an adventure. And of course, I went because of the drought. We have people and animals, livestock that's dying, especially the livestock. They can't save the livestock. And that's been the livelihood of Somalilanders for many years because most of them are nomads. And their wealth and their livelihood comes from their livestock. And so we had not had a rain in Somaliland of significance in over 3 years. And so therefore, the animals are dying, people have been internally dislocated, which means that many of the people living in the small villages, which was not accessible by truck, had to move into these areas, we call them internally displaced people camps, whether it's on a highway or a roadway, whether you can truck water into them to keep them from keep them alive, frankly.
Help me to understand here in America, what year would it be in Somaliland in terms of their lifestyle compared to here? Am I making any sense?
Well, I think there's maybe two answers to that. One, if you're in an urban area like Hargeisa, their lifestyle can be pretty much like it is here because you have access to the internet and electricity, of course. But then you go outside of Hargeisa, then you're back in the Middle Ages, I suppose, because the people, the nomads, have got these little communities that popped up all over, and there's no electricity there. And there's one thing that I noticed is different here than other parts of Africa I visited. Usually in Africa there's like mud huts and things that you see are straw huts. Mm-hmm. But in this instance in Somaliland, they make their huts out of like plastic and out of like clothing materials. And it's quite colorful as you drive through the countryside. And but it's a way of life that we wouldn't really understand as Westerners, especially not being a part of the United States. But I was invited there by the government of Somalia, and there was some confusion, I have to admit that, because the Coca-Cola component was thrown in there, as you probably know. Mm-hmm. There was this allegation that there was two primary water points in Somalia, and that Coca-Cola, in fact, was really hogging the water out of one of the primary water spots. And that was problematical to me, and I wanted to go and see because I was talking to Coca-Cola here locally, and they sent me a communication back saying that Coca-Cola always put back more water than they actually take out, and it didn't really make any sense to me. So I wanted to go to see for myself if, in fact, maybe a company that's headquartered here in Atlanta was actually depriving and causing, people to die in Somaliland. So that's what propelled me to go and to find out for myself.
And from that, what was the discovery with Coca-Cola in the water?
Well, what I discovered, as a matter of fact, when I arrived at the hotel, the owner of the Coca-Cola bottling company was already at the hotel. He was quite frightened, quite frankly, because he thought that I possessed power that I don't have. Somehow the word had gotten out that we were coming to close down the bottling company. Now, of course, as you know, I've been working with Coca-Cola a number of years, going all the way back in the early 80s. And Coca-Cola, I have to admit, have made progress. When we've pointed out areas that they need to improve upon, they've made adjustments. And so, as in case of South Africa, we
Brazil.
Yeah, and Brazil.
I remember that well.
And so I was saying that when I actually got there, and the Coca-Cola bottling owner was there, and what I also discovered is that my invitation letter by the government had somehow got misinterpreted. And so there was some allegation that maybe some entities was trying to strong arm Coca-Cola, because Coca-Cola had made it, through its bottler, a commitment of $5 million to put in piping in the Hargeisa area of Somaliland to get some reliable water. And allegedly, somehow my invitation that was given by the government had been, they didn't have all the information.
Well, look, tell me how you ended up with security guards.
Well, when I went, we got that matter straight about that my invitation was valid from the government of Somalia, so I was Somaliland, so I was comfortable going forward after we got that clarified by the government. And of course, my first day at the hotel, I was thinking, I shouldn't take too long of a shower because I'm depriving people of water. But then what I found out as my investigation proceeded, what I found out was that they have these aquifers, water aquifers, that, as in the case of this hotel, this is the biggest hotel in Somaliland, the most exclusive luxury hotel, but they have their own private water aquifer. And when I recognized that, and I start thinking, what did Coca-Cola do? Now, the young owner of the bottling company happened to be an African American. An African Somalian. And of course, I was gratified by that because I've been pushing Coca-Cola to open up the bottling operations to African ownership. Mm-hmm. And so I was pleasantly surprised when I saw the bottler was in fact an African, blacker than I am. A young man, about 41 years old, had invested like $17 million of his family money to build a Coca-Cola plant, which I visited a few days later. And it's about an hour and a half drive from Hargeisa, really sitting out in the desert. Now, what he had done, he looked at the geological studies that was done by the Chinese a number of years ago, and he discovered that there was a water aquifer there that would provide reliable water up to 100 years or 200 years. So, he decided that's where he would site his company. And it had nothing to do with the water that in Hargeisa, it had nothing to do with the nomads out there. So what I discovered in this instance that Coca-Cola, I think the young man that made a wise business decision to locate a reliable aquifer, but then somehow to blame Coca-Cola for people's dying for lack of water was just not fair. And what I had suggested, if you're going to ask, Coca-Cola to maybe stop bottling and turn all the water over, to the people, and they should have to pay for it. Why should a young man lose his investment of $17 million because he made a good business decision? So I could readily see, and then a part of the clarification in my invitation was that the invitation had been extended, that really the top man ministry didn't know about the invitation. And so once they clarified it, and this allegation that Coke was being, a shakedown,
All right.
then they had to apologize, and then the government, restated the fact that the Coca-Cola company had been really the best corporate friend they ever had for them to make, an investment in a country. As you know, Somaliland have not been acknowledged by the rest of the world. Right. And so therefore you can't get insurance. So this young man, even Lloyd's of London wouldn't underwrite or insure the plant. So he took a chance with his family money and without insurance to move forward. Now,
if we look at the Beasley Foundation in Somalia, what do you want to do? What do you want the foundation to do? What do you want us to do?
Yeah, well, one of the things that, and I made a decision about this, when I went into the hospitals and saw these babies, small kids, just near starvation, and the mothers and the people on the floor. As you know, I do have a relationship with MedShare International that's headquartered here in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And we just, ship containers all over the world. And one of the things, working with my good friend Nell Diallo, and working with the Coca-Cola company here, Coca-Cola had agreed to underwrite a 40-foot container of medical supplies to be sent to Somalia. Now, it's a small country. It's only about 3.4 million people in the entire country. So a 40-foot container of medical supplies will go a long ways in helping people. So that's one thing we're able to get done. So as we speak, these medical supplies is on the way that's going to benefit these suffering people in this small country.
You had mentioned something about food.
Well,
that you wanted to ship over there also.
Well, let me just suggest, when I first got there, we got all these international organizations like Save the Children. They have the headquarters here in the United States, but they had a big team of people there in Somaliland. And I just happened to strike up a conversation with one of the leaders from the Feed the Children, and he related to me that their budget is over $2 billion annually. Now, what bothers me, quite frankly, is that if you know Feed the Children, you'll see starving babies from Africa, and that's how they raise their budget. So they pull on the heartstrings of people and saying, send us $16 a month and we'll help these poor people.
We'll send you a picture of the child.
And but what bothered me, when I finally got to the displaced camps that these organizations said they were interested in helping, they were raising money off of, there was nobody there. None of the international agencies like Feed the Children were there. And I was so, disappointed because these people, some travel up to 50 miles to get to these internally displaced camps with their little children and so forth. And they have to build their own shelter. And but the water is there, which is life surviving and sustaining, and of course food is can be shipped in there. But I saw nobody from any of the international agencies there, so I was very concerned about that. And I did have a conversation with the International Red Cross.
What about our care here?
Well, no, there was no presence of care. I saw nothing from care there. So, I mean, the people just out there by themselves. But I guess some of these agencies like CARE, like Feed the Children, and even maybe the Red Cross, was paying money to a United Nations organization that was trucking in the water. And the water would be coming in every 5 days. They replenish the tanks there at the camps. Now, the food is another matter. And so what I've done since I've returned here, if you go to my webpage, which is Joe Beasley Foundation, it's www.joebeasleyfoundation.org, you'll see that we're shipping food. I was able to find a source of food through my friend at MedShare, who work with these international agencies. And this group is able to send in 250,000 meals for $10,000 shipping costs. So I went out on a limb personally and used my own personal money. I loaned it to the foundation to send a container. So as we speak, you just saw Dr. Freeman here getting a check signed. But we're going to step out, knowing the goodwill of people, and send this 250,000 meals that's going to save lives.
I need you to say that one more time. You need people need to know where to send this money, where you can buy this food to send to Africa. How would they do that? Well,
they could go to my webpage. It's www.joebeasleyfoundation.org. There's a donate button there that would be earmarked for the people that's, suffering in Somaliland. And I guess since you've been here, I've been talking to people there in Somaliland, and I find out that it's raining in the Haggis. It rained all day, and
God is good.
Oh yeah, but then so many animals have died, and until it's contaminating the water. So now there's an outbreak of cholera that we have to contend with, and so it's just one situation after another. But I think that if people would really get more acquainted and in tune with some of the things that's going on globally, I think there's some answers that will come out of local. A lot of people ask me, well, why are you running all over the world, when we have enough problems here at home? And I think we have to fight on all fronts.
Well, Mr. Beasley, I'm sitting here thinking in terms of the black community here in Africa, in terms of agriculture. Fort Valley. Can there be a link between Fort Valley and Somaliland in terms of agriculture?
No question, because Fort Valley, as you know, got a goat farm. And, they've got the technology of how to really, raise, goat meat.
All right.
And that's one of the staples of not only in Somaliland, but also pretty much throughout Africa, goat meat. So I think some kind of a relationship with Fort Valley would certainly be in order, and I thank you for that, because I'm going to explore that myself. What I've also done, Clyde, as you, I think, know, I went to President Peterson, who is the president of Georgia Tech, and I said to President Peterson, you got a great institution. I mean, you've got the capability to help in the nuclear sector, and we know that the nuclear sector, for the most part, is is not saving lives. And I know that, and you also know that Georgia Tech is a leader with the new drones that now are becoming so fashionable. And so I challenged him that, if you're working in these fields, how about doing something to save lives, like water in Africa? We know there's a water table around the planet, Earth. And so it's not really a shortage of water, even if it don't rain. There's sufficient groundwater. So I'd ask President Peters if he would use his engineering team to look at places like Somaliland to see if we can't not only extract the water there for them to consume when it's not raining, if a drought period comes, but also there's sufficient water that's under the ground for agriculture. So President Peterson happily accepted the challenge, and he farmed it out to one of the deans. And we've been meeting, we had 2 meetings recently, and we think the capability for Georgia Tech to get involved to solve the problem there in Somaliland, and if we can do it there in Somaliland, of course it could be replicated there in Kenya. I think they might be doing some work in northern Kenya. So there's some things that we're trying to do proactively, as well as reacting to the crisis now.
Now, in Somaliland, are there any natural resources?
Well, there's tons of natural resources, but they've not been exploited. And that's one thing I think the government is really keen on now, because the only thing they were relying on outside of the urban areas was the livestock. That was their market. They would, I know camel meat is, I don't know if you ever had any camel meat or not, but that's one of the delicacies there in Somaliland. And I'm sitting at dinner and they said, what is that? They said, that's Campbell. And it tastes quite tasty, quite frankly. So.
For those who don't know, if we look at the map of Africa, where does Somaliland sit?
Well, that's a great question, because it's amazing. I visited. There's a port city where 3 bodies of water come together. Namely, on the right is the Indian Ocean, in the middle is the Gulf of Aden, Aden, and on the left is the Red Sea. And so even Dubai, I think, has signed a contract with Somaliland to develop that port. And I'm quite excited myself to know that we really could have a Dubai right there in Somaliland. And the possibilities, I think, are just unlimited. I know there are some other issues that I don't fully understand. I'm dealing with the humanitarian side of it. But I know there are questions about the shifts in power in the world, even with Mr. Trump being, but I'm not conversant enough on these issues of how to tie it in what's going on in Syria and what's going on throughout the Islamic world.
Especially Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia. And so those are some dynamics that I want to know more about. I'm going to know more about. But right now we're trying to save lives.
On the humanitarian side.
We deal with the humanitarian side.
So again, if anybody want to contact you or get any more information from you on Somaliland, what do they need to do? Yeah,
well, they could go to my webpage, which is www.joebeasleyfoundation.org. And so I want to mention one other thing, though.
Go ahead, Mr. Beasley.
The other matter that I'm not just relying on Georgia Tech, but I visited 2 universities while in Somaliland, and the college in Hargeisa is quite a capable school, and I've suggested that there will be a relationship with the universities there in Somaliland with Georgia Tech. So we're working on that as we speak. And then I also went to the private sector. There's a group in South Georgia that has, I think, Sunbelt Solutions. The owner of the company is a young man. His name is Mr. Gillis, and Mr. Gillis is a retired judge. And I guess a couple of weeks ago, before I went to Somalia, he'd called me and told me that he was a visiting judge on the Supreme Court of Georgia. He was sitting as a visiting judge, but he's got a company, a solar company that can put up solar panels and also dig wells. And so Mr. Gillis is being invited by the government of Somalia to come in and to try to maybe use the private sector as another source of trying to make sure that we stabilize the situation there in Somaliland. And so if it don't rain over an extended period of time, the people and the animals won't die, and that we would have the technologies here for us to extract the water, not only for drinking, but also for irrigation.
In closing, what would you like to say?
Well, again, we're sending the supplies. We're trying to put Somaliland on the map. I've been asked to work with the government in getting Somaliland acknowledged as the 55th country in Africa, and I've accepted the challenge to do that. Now, what I'm doing, and to follow up on that, on Tuesday, I will be flying to London. I've been asked to be involved in the collaborative discussion with people from across the world to come to Windsor Castle in London to engage in 2 days of discussions on some of these issues that's pressing throughout the world. And the topic that we're dealing with in London, it's going to be from 18th through the 20th at Windsor Castle, is I'm going to be dealing with Haggisi, Somaliland, and asking the question, why is it? And Somaliland, quite frankly, is very peaceful. And they broke away from Somalia 26 years ago, and there's still violence in Somalia. I think, as a matter of fact, an American soldier was killed last week in Somalia. It has nothing to do with Somaliland. And so I think it deserves to be a separate country and recognized as separate, because it's been separate 26 years. And it's also a democratic country. And at another time, maybe we could talk a little bit about, how they deal with conflict. It's really very fascinating to me. Here's a country that, in the cities, cars and traffic jams like we have here. But there's no insurance because it's not, it's not recognized as a sovereign country in the world. So people can't get car insurance even. And so the way they resolve conflict, if there's an accident, damage, maybe somebody even get killed, rather than make it a primary police problem, they go to the tribes, to the elders. So your insurance is your tribe.
Arbitration.
Yes, and they work out something that what is fair. The notion of just incarcerating people for punishment is something that is not recognized in Somaliland. I think it would do well if we would look at how the people in Somaliland resolve conflicts, rather than saying, well, if you don't agree with me, then we'll just kill you. And I don't think that's a good format. And
I guess on a simpler note, I'm looking at the U.S. just spent $16 million to drop a bomb in Syria, $200 million to develop that bomb. How can we, as American citizens, stand up and say no more?
Well, I believe, and I am not quoting verbatim because you just came off with me with this, but somewhere in the Bible, I believe it says that we should beat our pruning hooks, our plows whatever that scripture is, I think you get the drift, that we need to study war no more and to continue to kill one another with this big mega bomb you're talking about that we dropped. And then they call it the mother of all bombs, right?
$16 million.
Yeah, but then you know that as a result of us developing, the United States developing, that that Russia have built now what they're calling the daddy of all bombs, which is much more powerful than the one that we dropped in Syria. So the notion that an eye for an eye and a teeth for a tooth, you know, Jesse Jackson will say, leave everybody blind and toothless. So I think it's nonsensical. There's a more excellent way, and I think we need to pursue the more excellent way.
And I guess on that note, we need to say, thank you, Mr. Beasley.
Thank you, Clyde.